Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to unpack a classic fable that perfectly illustrates an absolutely epic clash. We're talking about the timeless battle between brute force and sheer willpower. We'll be breaking down a simple, but honestly, incredibly profound story that teaches us a ton about how we handle the obstacles in our own lives.
But before we really dive in, I want you to just hold on to this fundamental question. What does true strength really look like? Keep that in the back of your mind as we go through this, because the answer we find in our source material, well, it might just surprise you. It completely flips our traditional understanding of power right on its head.
Okay, let's set the scene. We're immediately introduced to our two vastly different characters. On one side, we've got a tiny, determined bluebird mid-flight, and on the other, a massive, angry wind cloud aggressively blowing a gale, looming right over a scenic mountain path. The visual contrast here is stark, and it perfectly sets the stage for everything that follows.
So let's get into part one, the mountain challenge.
One day, this little bird sets out to fly across an immense mountain. Now, this isn't just a quick hop over to the next tree. This is a colossal obstacle that immediately builds the tension in our narrative. We know exactly how tiny the bird is, and a mountain, that represents the ultimate draining marathon.
Which brings us to part two, the boastful wind.
And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer scale of the conflict. By pitting the small, physically weak protagonist against an overwhelmingly huge and arrogant force of nature, our source text perfectly defines the odds. It's not just a physical mismatch, you know? It's an attitude mismatch. The bird is quiet and determined, while the wind is loud, boastful, and frankly, a bit full of hot air.
In fact, the wind starts blowing very strongly and actually laughs at the little bird. The wind just booms with absolute overconfidence about its ability to destroy anything in its way. It's literally relying entirely on its external, terrifying presence to intimidate its opponent into giving up before the fight even really begins.
And well, at first, that intimidation tactic actually works. Feeling completely terrified by this raw display of power, the little bird quietly vocalizes its deep insecurity and fear. It looks at the massive size of the wind, looks at its own tiny wings, and momentarily accepts the logic of the bully, thinking, I am too small.
Moving right along to part three, facing the fear.
But right when you expect the bird to turn around and fly home, we get a pivotal shift in the narrative. It's a firm, defiant refusal to accept defeat. The bird acknowledges the fear, sure, but decides not to let that fear dictate its actions.
The source material actually breaks this down into a highly actionable sequence for finding inner courage. First, it closed its eyes, completely shutting out the terrifying visual of the massive cloud. Second, it spread its wings, fully committing to the action. And third, it simply tried its best to move forward. It's a beautifully systematic approach to overcoming paralyzing fear.
This leads us to part four, the slow triumph. Now, the wind doesn't just let the bird pass. In fact, it ramps up its resistance, attempting to crush the bird's spirit with even more force. But the bird, it matches that force not with equal strength, but with continuous rhythmic effort. It literally just keeps flapping.
The crucial point here, and honestly this is where most of us give up, is that progress wasn't instant. Notice the strategic repetition in the text here, slowly, slowly, little by little. The bird isn't soaring gracefully through the sky, it is fighting for every single inch.
But ultimately, that sustained, relentless effort pays off. After a long time, resulting in a hard-won victory, the bird successfully crosses the mountain. It achieved the impossible, not in a single bound, but through 1,000 tiny, exhausted flaps of its wings.
And finally, part five, the real power. The wind, completely stunned by this unexpected outcome, does something truly remarkable. It concedes defeat and openly praises the bird's incredible bravery. The very force that was laughing and boasting just moments ago is now completely humbled, recognizing a type of strength it just doesn't possess.
Smiling, the little bird delivers this incredibly powerful truth. It acknowledges its physical reality. Yes, I am small, but proves that internal drive can entirely overcome physical limitations. It isn't magic. It's just a very practical formula of determination plus hard work. This creates a profound shift in perspective for the wind, and really for us as the audience too. It teaches us that raw, brute strength absolutely pales in comparison to true resilience. Sure, the wind had power, but the bird had power and endurance. So, to synthesize the core lesson here, we really have to look at how we define determination.
It's the true, unstoppable engine of success when you're facing insurmountable odds. It is the active decision to keep flapping when literally everything around you is trying to blow you backward.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to carry into your own daily challenges. Look, we all face massive, boastful wins in our lives, and we all have mountains to cross. So the question isn't whether you're strong enough right now. The real question is, what is your mountain, and will you keep flapping? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.